We all know infodumps are bad, right? Reviewers complain about them all the time, and writing courses 101 say, show don't tell. But what if I told you the infodump is just another tool in your toolbox that could be wielded effectively, could make audiences crave it? Hi, I'm Matt, and once a week I break down world building tricks, tips, and concepts, usually by building a new world on the fly. Today we're going to look at infodump equity as explained by Brandon Sanderson. So last week I mentioned infodump equity, and some people have asked about that. As I said, everyone thinks infodumps are bad, but why is that? It's just the giving of information. Well, it all comes down to the whole idea of show don't tell. You hear that adage in writing, you always need to show the information. But that comes from a weird source in that the adage comes from playwriting and screenwriting, both of which are visual mediums. You are watching people on the stage, you are watching people on the TV, so it kind of makes sense that you don't want them to just stand around and talk about something. You want to visually see it. That's why this show don't tell exists. Books are a completely different medium though. If you look at Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, Tolkien starts them off both with long, chapter-long infodumps about hobbits, their history, everything about them whatsoever, and it's the most beloved book in fantasy for the most part. So different mediums equal different uses of infodump, but you can still use infodumps as a tool in visual mediums like movies, as demonstrated by The Matrix. And we're going to show you how in just a second. Sanderson on his podcast mentioned infodump equity, and this whole idea that interest in the information being imparted has to equal or be greater than the information being imparted. And in fact, you need to make the audience crave the information so that when the infodump comes along, they're excited for it rather than a slog of something I have to read. This is done by raising questions and then promising the answer later. This is different than J.J. Abrams' idea of the mystery box, which is just ask a question, raise a question, and then not answer it later and raise another question and just kind of keep people guessing and hope that they'll stick around for it. But as we saw in the latest Star Wars trilogy, it finally caught up with them. You need to actually have your answers, which is infodump equity. The author has the answers and will give them to the audience if they stick around long enough. We're going to use The Matrix as an example. It is science fiction, I know, and this is a fantasy world building, but it is perfect, and it's partially because it's so ubiquitous. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows the beats. When I say something about Trinity, doing her iconic kick, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And even though it is science fiction, it is basically a magic system within it. And it's also a perfect example of what I mentioned last week of how soft systems can turn hard over time. This is for all world building, and The Matrix is a great example because it starts so soft and becomes very, very hard. And then it comes soft again at the very end of the first trilogy, but we'll try to ignore that part and just look at the first movie, which was pretty damn near perfect. So infodump equity often is raised by asking a question, and this is done often in a prologue, which, much like infodumps, has fallen out of vogue, but is really, really useful. In The Matrix itself, we see it when Trinity does her little iconic kick. She's beating up all these men, and then some of the agents are after her. She's showing impossible powers with her jumps, but they're doing them too, and she's afraid of them. This is asking so many questions, especially when she disappears into a phone. You don't actually see it, so you don't know what happened. You just know that she disappeared into a phone. Like, what's going on here? I want to find out more. The prologue, and that was the prologue for that, and prologues are, even though they're out of fashion, are very, very useful. We see it in Game of Thrones, where you see the White Walkers and this group of people being killed by them, Night's Watch being killed by them for the first time. In Star Wars, you have the opening crawl, then you have Vader shows up, long before the story kicks into gear with Luke. Lord of the Rings, in the movies especially, they raise the question of showing the villain and where he's got this power, and then boom, we juxtapose all of these against the very mundane life of our hero that is going to have to rise to the challenge. This is one of the things that I do love about introducing the villain first. You ask a question, you raise here's the problem, and then you say, how is this person going to solve this problem? How is that even possible? The same is true in The Matrix. You see Neo waking up, he's got this boring life, he's overslept. Oh my God, how mundane could you get? But you're still getting hints from it. You see that he's a hacker, it involves technology, he's wondering what the Matrix is, someone is hacking into his system, little knock knock, follow the white rabbit, all impossible stuff. You also get it when he's at work. Morpheus calls. Suddenly we have our inciting incident. We have our call to action. You just need to go outside and walk along this. There are men coming from you. Here's some more impossible things as I'm telling you what to do, even though I definitely can't see you. But then, part of the hero's journey, we have the refusal of the call, where Neo does not go out on the limb and he is captured. We raise more questions in the Matrix when Agent Smith, who is a great villain, probably in the top 5 iconic villains of all times, steals his mouth, bugs him. This is all completely breaks from reality. This is all impossible stuff. This is what makes it a soft magic system. We don't know anything about it at this point in the film. Neo doesn't know anything about it, but he wants to know more at this point. And even though he's refused the call, they still come for him again, and they're going to remove the bug, and which is a very weird and scary scene. They don't explain it to him. They just say you're bugged, and then pull a literal metal bug out of him. All right, this is where it gets fun. We finally see Morpheus for the first time, and we get the other iconic bit of red or blue pill. This is the break to Act 2, actually, because the hero has to make a choice. And Neo makes the choice, boom, pops out of the Matrix. We see all of this machinery. He's not doesn't look anything like himself. He falls out. It's just raising more and more questions at this point. We're 30 minutes into the movie, by the way, at this point. I hope you've enjoyed my terrible retelling of it. So they've escaped from the Matrix. We've raised more questions. Why are my arms not working? Why you're seeing for the first time? Like, so many questions. 40 minutes into the movie, Morpheus is finally going to explain it. They go into the Matrix, and it is the biggest info dump in literature for the last 30 years, basically. The most successful, biggest info dump. 40 minutes into it, the two of them sit down. It is literally telling, not showing. Yes, there are visuals going along with it, but they are sitting down as Morpheus imparts everything. The history, the war between humans and machines. And this is why they made the Matrix. It is spelled out in detail. And this is something that we want. This is something the audience is craving, has been waiting for this moment, for them to sit in a chair and talk, because they've raised so many mysteries and they're finally going to explain it. And it hardens the system at that point. It has been a soft system up until this, and then now we're going to explain the rules. We're going to learn abilities, which is our next one on the continuum of magic systems, and then we're going to go through a training montage, also iconic, where we start to learn the limitations and all of the abilities itself. This section right here is known as the fun and games in screenwriting and the hero's journey, and then it really shows how well Infodump equity works with the 3-act structure, which is secretly 4 acts. Let anyone tell you otherwise. These beats hit really, really well. They also work for Harry Potter when you think about it. Both of them start with the prologue. You see some magic. You start to wonder, where did this guy come from? Why is he talking to a cat? Why is there a lady there now? Why are these people wearing robes? Boom, we're back to Harry's mundane life, how hard it is, look at him as an underdog. Then we start getting some hints of some strange things. He's talking to snakes, and then the letters start showing up, and boom, we have a refusal of the call. Mind you, it's his uncle refusing the call, but we still keep seeing all these strange, impossible things, and we're wondering what is going on. What are these letters that they won't let Harry read? Why are these owls showing up? How can they find them all the time? Again, refusal of the call. They go out to the island, and then finally Hagrid shows up. Boom, shows powers, turns, Piggly's tail. I forgot what his name is, but he gives him a tail, and he sits down and he's like, "You're a wizard, Harry. This is what it's gonna be. Like, do you want to be a part of this?" Harry says yes. Now that the refusal of the call adventure is off, Act 2 begins, and Harry goes to enter the new world through decisive action on his own part, and that begins the fun and games. We're going to sit here and we're going to buy you your wand. This is the rules of wands. You're encountering the other kids in the magic world, that kind of thing. So 3-act structure, Hero's Journey, works really, really great for Infodump equity by raising questions, then hardening the system and all the world building details later on. Last week, when I was looking at soft systems with the appearance, abilities, limitations, and costs, the AALC system, I ended up getting a randomized system, and this week, I'm going to use it to show you some Infodump equity and how I would try to build it if I was making a story out of this. In my randomized magic system from Chaotic Shiny, it was gym focused. It involved far seeing, air, chaos, and boundaries. And from that, I was going to build a magic system, and I think I did a pretty good job. Hopefully it's up right now if you want to go get a refresher course on it. I'm going to show you how to move from soft magic system to hard. I'd probably keep this system, and when I look at the point system later in the AALC. All right, so if I was going to do this with a proto story, I would start with a prologue, same way with The Matrix, with Harry Potter. With Star Wars, you show your villain first. I'm a huge fan of this in storytelling because, again, you show what the hero is going to be up against. And I would show this villain who wears this black onyx or black teardrops, whatever. I think I have one somewhere. Anyways, this villain uses the power and kills someone who is also using power. Let's say it's a water power. They have a blue stone, and the two of them battle, and the bad guy captures them and takes their stone, rendering them powerless. No explanation. Just show it. It's cool. The end. Boom. Juxtaposition. We see our main character. We're going to use a young male. Let's say he's about to turn 16 or something like 17. Let's do it that way. Make him a little bit older, and this is when he will become a man. And he cannot stand his tragically unhip mother. He's trying to be cool. She is definitely not cool. But we also show him no matter how cool he's trying to be, he's not. And everyone knows this. We establish him as an underdog. I would also hint at the power. His birthday's coming up. He's searching for his present. He finds a crystal necklace from his mom, and he's like, "Oh my God, that is the worst present ever. I've been wanting an Xbox, but no, she's going to get me a crystal, and I'm going to be laughed out of school because of it." But then we're going to need an inciting incident. So let's say as he's ruffling through her purse later, he brushes the crystal, and a bolt of energy happens, and he's like, "What was that?" Minutes later, because inciting incident, goblins show up, or little demons, something small and impish, but frightening nonetheless. He's running through the house trying to get away from them. He's going to get caught, and that's when his mom shows up, and suddenly she's a raving badass. She's got this ruby that she's always worn that I should have mentioned earlier, and I would then go back and add that detail in if I was writing the story. That she's got it, and she, while holding it, can summon fire and do all sorts of really cool things. It's destroying demons left and right. But then the bad guy shows up that we've seen before, and just, about to kill her. She sacrifices herself, allows herself to be captured, throws him, the main character, her crystal, and the crystal, and says, "Go find your Aunt Sally." Something like that. So the goblins attack, and he's about to be killed when all of a sudden his crystal glows and the air power flies him away. This is the chosen one, which again is kind of a cheat, but again it can be used to raise questions of what is this power, why is it whisking him away, how is it doing this? Boom, he's safe, mother's captured, and the demons are after him. We're going to show him fumbling around. He's got this crystal, can't figure it out, but when he has it, weird stuff starts happening, like car jumps curb, almost hits him, stuff falls, almost hits him, but it's only when he's holding the crystal, only when he's in physical contact with it. So, this is bad, I don't like it. And when he touches it, he can see things. It's almost like an astral projection. He's thrown out of his body, he can far see, but it's scary. How do I get back to my body? We'll probably give him a buddy character who's also running with him at this point. Eventually in the story, this pretty close to the end of the first act, Aunt Sally is going to show up finally, demonstrate her powers, and she's going to say, "I can take this crystal from you. If I take it away, these creatures will leave you alone." And he's like, "But what about my mom?" She's like, "Well, I'll try to rescue her." And the main character's like, "But I got to rescue my mom. So I want you to teach me the way of these crystals." He has now accepted the call to adventure and is taking the break to the second act by taking decisive action on his part. And that is when Aunt Sally is going to take him under her tutorship. There will probably be some other kids that are learning magic, so we can have some more friends, because drama is necessary, so you need human interaction for that. Could be elves, we can have any type of interaction. Anyways, this is the fun and games part of this story. This is where the Infodump equity happens. This is where we've been wondering, what are the powers? We can see hints of them all this time, but she is going to sit down, explain them, and start showing him how to use it. This is where the magic system starts hardening, and it starts getting fun. So, that's why it's called the fun and games section, right? So there you go, Infodump equity. Do it by raising questions, often in a prologue. Make the audience crave the answers by raising questions. Promise them a payoff as long as they stick around. There you go. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you can use it to build some better worlds.